have designed. These tools that we have designed in order to do our work has been designed with face-to-face contact sessions in mind. So right. I wouldn't be surprised that the tools that we've designed to do our work doesn't necessarily lend itself to remote work because they weren't designed for it.
Right.
So I think that's also an important consideration that we often take for granted. We think we can just transplant, work as we've done it at an office right. into remote work. That's not always the case. You can't always do it. Some of it works fine, some of it not.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to learn still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I think that's one of the things that we're going to probably discuss during the session. I think we can get started within.
Sure, I'm happy to.
Really didn't work well. Yeah, what Richard is saying about putting people into breakout rooms on Zoom. I've seen this many times not working very well. Some of you might know I'm personally doing lots of teaching for higher education for different universities, and sometimes quite many times breakout rooms don't work as well. Like you just go into a breakout room to see what's happening, and then everyone is everyone is talking basically. It's one of the challenges of I guess teaching remotely to students, which are not always the most motivated crowd. But anyway, that being said, let me start with like a 2-minute presentation, and then Cliff can introduce himself and we can get started. So first of all, thank you for coming here. That's the third and last event of the Organizational Culture in Tech series. I'm very happy to announce that besides this event, there's also going to be a paid workshop that's going to take place next month. And also there's going to be an online course that should be uploaded this month. The course also includes an hour coaching with Dr. Cliff for anyone who wants to delve deeper into the subject of organizational culture, or for anyone who wants to maybe they need help with some particular aspects of the culture of the company they work for. So we'll make sure to announce this via email to anyone who signed up for this event, but also to the Tesseract Academy newsletter. And that being said, I'd like to share a few words about the Tesseract Academy. Please visit our website if you haven't done this already. And our goal is to help decision makers understand and implement technology faster, easier, and better. We work with companies of all sizes, and we provide many different types of services in the space, not only of education, but also research and development and implementation. Our focus is mostly the decision maker and also what some people might call deep tech, that is data science, blockchain, AI. But we also would delve into other topics which might not classify under the umbrella of deep tech, but we feel they're very important for any person working in technology, whether they're an entrepreneur or whether they are a manager in an organization. And the organizational culture is obviously one of those topics. So we operate a very wide network of experts. Here you can see some of them. So you have people specializing in data strategy, product development, project management, AI, ethics, many different kinds of topics. And we organize all kinds of events. Most of them are free, but we also organize in-house workshops as well. A few words about who I am. I'm the CEO of the Tesseract Academy. You can find me at this email, which I'm sharing with you now in the chat. And I have more than 10 years of experience in the areas of data science and AI. I'm also affiliated, besides the Tesseract Academy, with some institutions like University College London, the Cambridge University and London Business School. And I've also written up a book on data science, and it's really a book meant for decision makers, especially those that do not have technical knowledge. And I'm more happy to share a PDF copy with you if you just drop me an email. And here are some of the people that we've helped. Here some of these people are more specifically entrepreneurs, but we've also worked with big organizations from Vodafone and British Lands all the way to the US Navy. So we run various programs on the themes that you can find on our website, like from live workshops to online assisted courses and coaching, but we also offer implementation services. Now, for example, we have a very big data science project in the insurance industry. And please visit our website to learn more. And again, if you have any questions, just let us know. And so today we're very happy to have Cliff with us on the third lecture of this series, talking about organizational culture. And I'll let him introduce himself and the topic. So now I'm going to activate screen sharing and I'll turn mute on. Cliff, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Stelios. Let me quickly grab my presentation. There we go. Okay, so as maybe I should just minimize this. As Stelios mentioned, oh, first, can everyone hear me okay and see me okay? Is everything
Yes,
good?
yeah.
Perfect. So as Stelios mentioned, this is the third in a series of lectures on organizational culture. So they build on each other. So so today's session is going to be more about practical applications and what happens in the industry when we consider organizational culture, and specifically within tech. Why is this thing not skipping ahead? There we go. Okay. My computer divorced my my keyboard for a second there, but they're back together. They're back together, looks like. So this is the overview of the entire course, which includes the previous two sessions. So we started with the basics about what is organizational culture, what it is not, of which I will give a recap. And then we will also have a hackathon next month. Someone is not on mute. Would they mind muting themselves? Okay, sounds like they're muted now. Cool. And at the hackathon, we will be working with actual tools in which we can audit our current state of our organizational culture, work on ways in which we can develop it, improve it, etc. And today is the last, let's call it a theoretical session before we get into the, even though today is practical application, we won't actually be practically applying it. We will be looking as an outsider what practical application looks like. So just a recap of the first two sessions. In the first lecture that we had, we looked at a bunch of definitions and also distinguished organizational culture from other related concepts. And so in terms of defining what it actually is, because this is something that is widely discussed in academia and in practice, everyone has an idea about what organizational culture is in their mind. I personally prefer, as a pseudo-academic, prefer looking towards the research and what we know, evidence-based, how we can define organizational culture. And the definition that I've distilled, this isn't one single definition, this is an amalgamation of a few definitions. And you can actually, if you, Stelios, correct me if I'm wrong, but the other presentations are available somewhere, right?
Yes, they're available on our YouTube channel, and you can actually also find them on our website. I'll be sharing a link in 1 minute.
Okay, perfect. That is just in case anyone is maybe very particular and they wanted to see which definitions. I do link the actual authors in that first session, and just cite the ones that I used to distill into this first bullet, which is the definition we use. It's a system of shared beliefs that give meaning to social interactions within organizational life. So organizational culture is not just working remotely, how we greet each other, and do we have morning huddles and all of these things. These are representations of culture. It's the top level, visible level of culture, but culture actually is underpinned by specific beliefs, which then give meaning to social interactions within a specific social context. And in this case, the context is organizational life. So which then takes me to my next point. It's multi-level. So you have the stuff at the top, which you see, the language used, our practices, our policies, these things. then that's underpinned by beliefs, and those beliefs are underpinned by worldview, how we actually see the world. It affects all levels of organizational life. So organizational culture doesn't only affect remote work, is a very topical issue right now, something like remote work, or the language we use, or the symbols, artifacts that we use in representing our corporate identity. It affects all parts of organizational life, from your emails to everything. And that effect can be visible or invisible, but it does affect everything. Then within tech, why should you even care about organizational culture when there are so many different things to consider, which can take up your time and your resources? Based on the evidence, as a tech organization, it is important that you consider organizational culture before it becomes a problem. Often I find in my own work in the industry that, and this is now not limited to only to tech, but organizations, typically the younger ones, the ones that are growing, only start looking at culture when it's too late, when it becomes a problem. And then it's very difficult to change. Not impossible, but it's better to start earlier when it's not a problem and ingrain it into how you build your organization from the get-go. Reasons why tech specifically should consider organizational culture is internationalization of new ventures. Organizational culture has been shown time and time again. If you grow into new markets, if you want to internationalize, get into global markets, organizational culture is a catalyst and an underpinning force for good into achieving that growth into new ventures, into international markets. It facilitates collaboration. The time of operating in a vacuum is over. We collaborate to get stuff done internally, as well as collaborate with external partners, whether that's suppliers, government institutions, whatever the case might be. Collaboration is key to success in a contemporary industry, and organizational culture facilitates that. Then innovation, organizational culture has been shown to be a catalyst for innovation, as well as motivation is probably the most well-known one, the most well-researched one. Is if you have the right organizational culture, it is very easy to keep your employees motivated and engaged. So that was the first session. The second session, just a quick recap, we looked at different perspectives of organizational culture. So there are some models or perspectives that says that organizational culture doesn't happen by itself. It's embedded into a broader social context. So if you've got the same company, say McDonald's, that's you probably can't tell, but I do like myself some McDonald's. If you've got a McDonald's and you have a corporate office in the United States and have a corporate office in Dubai. Is there a McDonald's in Dubai? I think so. Yes, there is. I've been there. There is. Because of the difference in the national cultural context, the organizational culture will be different, even though it's the same organization with the same rules, the same strategy, the same recruitment process. Because it is embedded into a different national culture, it will permeate the organizational culture as well, and there will be differences. Then other perspectives that look only, and so that's Hofstede House, the Globe Project, those kinds of perspectives that look at the embeddedness into a broader social structure. Then you have people like Edgar Schein, who only looks at organizational culture within the organization itself, and it then splits up organizational culture as the stuff you can see. It's kind of a triangle with 3 layers. The top tip of the triangle is the stuff you can see. So the behaviors and the artifacts like procedures and policy, the stuff that you can actually interact with, that's just the top level. Then you've got values in the middle and you've got worldview at the bottom. It's important to keep these things in mind, because often when people think, oh, I want to change my organizational culture, and then I just put a bunch of superficial stuff into what we do every day, the frequency at which we have meetings, how we promote people, how we engage with each other. These are all good and fine, but you have to consider what values underpin them and how we see the world, which underpins those values. Otherwise, they remain at a surface level and you don't actually change the organizational culture. Then we looked at a few models that you can use. The three models that I list there this is not an exhaustive list. There's many different models. And what I found is every model has pros and cons. Every model that you use to measure organizational culture has got its limitations and its benefits. So it really depends on what you want to achieve and what the nature of your business is and the industry in which you operate. But I find that these three are very useful. So it's the competing values one, 8 styles, and then Teal company culture matrix. Then we looked at how we can gather data to measure or determine our organization's culture. So first you would decide what your perspective is, which perspective am I adopting? Then you would choose a model that fits that perspective, and then you can go into data collection. And again, it depends on what you want to achieve, your budget, your time frame, and then you can collect data through qualitative analysis, through looking at strategy documents, processes, analyzing that. Then you can actually do surveys, custom surveys. There's existing surveys out there that you can use as well, which is more quantitative. And then you can use a mixed method approach and analyze things like email, Slack interactions, ratings and comments on Glassdoor. It's like a mixed, which would be a mixed method approach. And yeah, so that is the recap. So now let's look at what we actually want to discuss today. How long did that take? That took about 20 minutes. So let's get right into it. So now, throughout this lecture, I'm going to ask you to engage with me a little bit in the absence of having you in front of me. So please open, you can do this on your phone. You can scan that QR code and go, and it will automatically take you to menti.com. Or please, if you are using a desktop, please go open up a new tab and then go to menti.com on the new tab and then type in the code that you see there, 3204539. Don't close it if you'll be asked to rate. No, what's the first one is you have to select a few options. Throughout today's session, I'm going to refer you back to that. So don't close it after you've done. If you have selected your, is it this one? Yes, okay. If you've made your selection, please come back to the Zoom presentation and then just keep the Menti tab open because we're going to do other ones as well. So we've got, so my question here is, which areas underpin the guiding principles of culture management? So in practice, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind and you need to look at when you want to manage your organizational culture. So you've maybe implemented a new solution, or you are in the process of setting up organizational culture for a new venture. You're maybe starting a new organization or venturing into an international market. What are the 5 things? So the options are strategy, innovation, communication, efficiency, dissemination, leadership, policy, and performance. We've got 8 people who have voted so far, 9. You can select multiple options as well, by the way, if anyone didn't know. And I want 5. So the ones that are standing out so far looks like strategy, communication, and leadership. Got 9 people who voted. Anyone else? Stelios, how many people do we have in this session?
We have 13 in total, including ourselves.
Okay, cool. So I think we're gonna then leave it at that. So it looks like our top, okay, so which would be the top 5 then? So it's strategy, communication, leadership, policy. Yeah, we don't have a, okay, and then dissemination looks like those 5. Yeah, strategy, communication, leadership, policy, and performance. The correct ones are, oh, why is it not giving you the, there we go. Okay, cool. So the correct ones is having a culture strategy. It's very important to have a culture strategy. That's not overall company strategy. Yes, it should speak to it, but when you want to build your organization's culture, you have to have a culture strategy. You have to communicate your strategy to external stakeholders in various ways. The way in which you communicate it will really depend on the nature of the culture, the nature of the stakeholder, the nature of the relationship. Then not a lot of people said dissemination. It's very important that you disseminate your cultural message, what you want to achieve. And then obviously, as I said earlier, when we did the recap, the values which underpin that culture and the worldview needs to be disseminated within the organization. You have to have so both formal leadership and informal leadership. With informal, I think formal leadership is obvious. With informal leadership, I'm referring to people that have some kind of influence in the organization without having a formal managerial or leadership role. So this can be because people just like them, or it could be because they have a certain expert skill set, or they've been with the company for a very long time. So leveraging people in formal and informal leadership roles to maintain the cultural message, to model the desired behaviors that's associated with the culture that we want, and then performance. 2 key aspects of performance in organizational culture development is, first, we need to look at, are we achieving the culture that we want? Are we able to get the artifacts right? So the behaviors and the policies and the procedures, are we able to get that right? And then secondly, are we able to maintain that? Especially in times like now, with the global pandemic that looks like it's never going to go away, feels like it's never going to go away. When you're strained and stressed, and it's high stress, even though there might not be a pandemic, but you might be stressed in your organization given a certain condition, it's very easy to fall back into old habits and old ways of doing things. So making sure that you're also then able to maintain the culture that you want. Okay, right, so we're not going to do that one yet. We're going to go back to my slides. So what I've just mentioned, those are the 5 guiding principles according to McKellies and Harji. I'm probably butchering these guys' names, but those are the 5 guiding principles that you can use for formulating your culture strategy, developing your cultural leaders and making sure that they model the desired behaviors and interactions, disseminate the culture within the organization, measure, and then communicate with your external stakeholders. Next one, critical aspects of organizational culture in tech. And now we are back into this one, and this is the next one. So organizational culture and performance. What is the rate of reduced work days missed due to poor health? Is it 20%, 70%, or 90%? So now if you want to take a guess, obviously the takeaway is going to be organizational culture that is good and adequate and appropriate and productive and healthy and all of these adjectives, if we have that, then people will go to work, or it will be less likely to miss work due to poor health. So most people are saying 20%. What rate of reduced workdays missed due to poor health? 20%. Only 2 people say 70%. No one says 90%. Right. So I actually can't remember what the actual, okay, the correct answer isn't indicated there. So let's look at this one. Poor health, where is poor health? 70%. So the correct answer is 70%. Less workdays missed to poor health. Okay, so let's start at the top. Organizational culture is important for tech organizations because if we start at the very top, inclusive organizational cultures promote talent attraction and retention. If you are in tech, you cannot afford to not attract top talent. You cannot afford to lose top talent. It is absolutely crucial for the survival of a tech organization. I can't imagine, I mean, a few companies, depending on industry, can actually get away with just appointing anyone who's willing to work and just training them in-house, especially with your older organizations. That's very transactional. But in tech, it's just not an option. So 20% of people are more likely to recommend their employer to other prospective employees, someone that might be considering working for your organization, but only if the organizational culture is considered to be inclusive. If your organizational culture is inclusive, people are also 30% less likely to seek alternative employment. So so it's both the attraction and then the retention as well. And this is evidence-based. This is actual research that has been done. And it wasn't even that long ago, in 2017. Then engaging organizational culture actually promotes performance. That's according to Gallup. 20% more likely to report excellent performance if the organizational culture is healthy. 45% more likely to report high levels of adaptability. Another thing that is critical for tech organizations is the ability to be adaptable, or agile, as it's known in some spaces. But I don't want to talk about agile too much because I'm not an expert, and I know some people get very precious about what is agile and what it is not. So we'll leave it at that, adaptability. And then the question was about the workdays missed due to poor health. If your organizational culture is engaging, then people are 70% less likely to have workdays missed due to poor health. Yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So these stats were pre-pandemic. Do you think the numbers be higher or lower?
I'm not a gambling man, so I can't say. I honestly, and this is not me just trying to sit on the fence, I think some of these will be exacerbated and some of these will probably be better. I think given the nature of people losing their jobs and being harder to make ends meet, I think for instance the inclusive organizational cultures, the not recommending their employer and being less likely to leave, those would probably be lower, I think, just because people don't have as many options. At the same time, there's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation, where people are actually leaving. So I don't know. Poor health, I mean, that one's anyone's guess because health is a bit of a black box at the moment. And what's the other ones? Performance and adaptability. Honestly, I can't say. I really can't say.
I just wondered, simply from the fact that if you're sitting at home, and this is an over-exaggeration, if you're sitting at home and no one looking over your shoulder, like in the office, about what you're doing, I just think there's a lot more inclination to say, oh, what else is out there? Greener pastures. I just don't know if anyone else had a thought on it.
No, 100%. I agree. That's what I found in my life. Since the pandemic, when the pandemic started, I was still a consultant like I am now, but I was working for a large organization. I was placed out to different clients. And when we started remote work, I realized exactly what you said. Oh, there are very much greener pastures out there. So now I'm still a consultant, but I'm working for myself. So I can speak from personal experience that was the case. I just don't know, broadly speaking. I think there's a lot of space for research there. I don't know. Does anyone else want to share?
Can I just share one more thought?
Sure, please.
Sorry to be disruptive.
No, not at all.
So the stats I've seen about remote working and the productivity is really good. It's increased. But what I'm hearing and reading is that the creativity has dropped. So that collaborative, and you talked about it earlier, the collaborative environment, which is in the office, that's sort of suffered. And what you're getting is a lot of people doing what they've always done, as just getting through work quicker because they've got more time and more flexibility. But a lot of the stuff that needs creativity, where you're bouncing ideas around, and going back to your sort of commitment, that goes down. I think that's one of the things, and I think you said at the beginning of this, was you have to adapt the way you adopt remote working.
No, I completely agree. I recently did, I designed a course for my alma mater, Queen Mary University of London. They have an incubator where they do small business development. And the one thing that I did, the one course that I designed was on design thinking. And I don't know how many of our people in attendance know what design thinking is, but just designing that course on design thinking, because that's a way of fostering creativity and thinking outside the box and innovating. That's essentially what it's for. The way that design thinking is sort of taught and approached is all assuming that you are sitting in front of each other, and that's a core component of design thinking. Is it is for creativity. And if a seminal and a widely used technique such as design thinking is designed around the idea that we're actually sitting face to face, then the simplest, most basic ways in which we foster creativity definitely also needs to be re-examined to see if it fits remote work. Thanks for that. Very good points. Cool. So then at this point, it's probably sound like a broken record, but I've spent a lot of time curating.
I've got to go now.
Bye-bye. Oh, okay. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The third category there is equitable organization. So first we had inclusive, then engaging, and now equitable organizational cultures promote competitiveness. Now, how on earth do I get from being fair and equitable to competitiveness? Well, 87% of key decision makers in tech says that there is an imbalance in terms of favor towards men, and that imbalance can manifest in various different ways, from the most basic one is representation, to the way we evaluate achievements, to the opportunities we afford. 87% of people asked in key decision-making roles, so that says that tech is definitely imbalanced towards men. 48% of women are less likely to pursue a career in STEM due to this perceived male-dominated culture. 23% of STEM employees are women, only 23%, and only 5% of leadership roles in STEM are held by women. And the reason why, you might be asking, okay, well, that's just equity. What does it have to do with competitiveness? Well, if there is a perception that your industry, and in your case is maybe your tech organization itself, is male dominated, and with that comes certain assumptions about the culture that exists there, then that is a large chunk of talent that you are not dipping into. There's a lot, and then if you want to think more longer term and more broader socially, that's a lot of individuals. If you look at the 23% of people of STEM, 20% of STEM employees who are women, that's a large chunk of people, women in STEM, or women who might be thinking of going into STEM, talent that is just not used or not capitalized on. So an inclusive culture, an engaging culture, and an equitable culture makes practical sense. It's not a nice to have. Here we can see that it practically actually makes a tangible difference. And now I think we have another, no, we don't have another. So now linking organizational culture to success in tech. I have a quote here from the Accenture Technology Vision of 2021, where they say it is now the moment of truth. Technology has sustained us through the pandemic, which I have to agree with. I have worked with quite a few organizations in the last year and a half or so, and pretty much across the board, the one thing that organizations or teams specifically in organizations have said has facilitated the transition to remote work or hybrid work, or maintaining their ability to do their work, has been technology. And now continues to redefine how we work, live, and interact. And these are key tech trends leaders must embrace, which is the next thing that I want to talk about. But so when I did my recap, I mentioned that organizational culture is an important consideration for tech, because it helps with innovation, motivation, expanding into new ventures, and internationalization. We've said that inclusive organizational cultures can help you attract talent. People are less likely to miss work due to poor health. You don't miss out on large chunks of talent because your organizational culture is not male dominated. But now I want to know from you, if we go back to the I incorrectly moved on without asking you to complete this one. The correct answer would have been, yeah, it would have been that one. Okay, so what aspects of the future of tech success links to organizational culture? So now I want you to be really, really, really specific. And I think this is a word cloud. You should have the option to type in something. I want to know from you what things that not broad strokes like innovation or talent attraction or stuff like that. I want very tech specific, very future focused. And I'm going to give you the answers afterwards, but I would really like to know from the group, what aspects of the future in tech do you think links to organizational culture? Oh dear. No one has an opinion?
Could you give an example of the type of thing you want? Sorry.
Okay, well, I can't think of anything else but than my examples that I have. So one is, I'll mention it because we actually have spoke about it quite a few times, is remote work, or at least hybrid work. So in order to work remotely or hybrid is going to be a defining feature of if your organization will be able to function properly in the future. So remote work is one. Yes. AR, VR. AR, what's that? Like, it's augmented reality, right? Interesting. It's interesting that someone said centralized comms. That's not one of the measures of success that my list that's included in my list. So I'll comment on it now already. I think there has been a major move towards decentralization. If we look at things like the rise of no code, I'm by no means an expert in technology. I've just worked with tech clients, and my areas of expertise is, the stuff like organizational culture that you apply in tech. But things like no-code apps and databases, and okay, maybe not a database, but decentralizing, democratizing. So I'd be really interested to maybe hear about what someone said meant by centralized comms, how that is a tech success feature of the future.
So, Cliff, it wasn't me who said that, but I got to take some exception to this decentralized approach.
Okay.
Essentially, if you go back, I don't know, I'm not going to show my age, let's say 10 years or so, I think this no-code world is going to give us a real problem going in the future. What you're developing is a situation where people can develop their own code to process, automate, which is fantastic. I'm not against that. But I go back to a few years when people used to create whole systems in Excel using VB and so forth. And the challenge then came when that person left. There was no documentation. There was no structure about how someone can take ownership of that system they wrote in Excel. Right. So I think I love no code, don't get me wrong, but I think if someone's going to do it, you got to have some communication about making sure they follow certain rules. And it's basically what you do with good developers. You say, here's the rules, go fill it, document away.
Agreed. Very good point. I can share a similar anecdote from my experience. So I'm a licensed psychologist, and I've seen within the, oh dear, my computer is going to run out of juice. I forgot to plug it back in.
Just while you plug it back in, then I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I wrote Centralized Communications. And what I was getting at was the idea, the concept that at the moment what we've got, or what seems to have happened, particularly over the course of the pandemic, is that we've got siloed communication channels. So, developers are working on a particular thing, and there will be a very small cache of people involved in that. And actually a migration across to a central communication repository where that is fully visible to everybody fosters a much more culturally open mechanism by which to approach certain challenges. And it may be that that's simply, it's open and it's inviting people to be involved in that journey, and having that open culture where you can get involved in that. I'm not a technical person within my organization. I'm a product owner. I kind of write the high level stuff. But I still have thoughts and ideas that I can contribute to, and I find that very empowering, and it facilitates a huge part of our culture internally.
Excellent, very good point. Thanks for that. Thanks for clarifying. Okay, so let's then go over into my list. So my list that I have is from Accenture, sorry. And so they have 5 measures of success in tech for the future. The one I've mentioned already is remote work. There's cultural shifts that need to be developed to address the security ramifications of remote work. So there's security, but also the human component, how people interact. Another thing is that affects remote work is how leaders operate. And this speaks to my earlier comment on the tools that we have developed to do our work. Leadership has, for many people who's especially been in leadership for a while, knows only how to lead by proximity. And that doesn't necessarily mean micromanagement, but the ways in which they influence people they've developed over time requires proximity. And with remote work and hybrid work looking like it's here to stay, at least hybrid work, that needs a reevaluation. If you don't have an organizational culture and leadership that is flowing from that culture that facilitates remote and hybrid work, you're going to have a problem in the future. Then architecting for a better future. So enterprises can custom tailor every layer of it now, but building and wielding the most competitive stack means thinking differently. And so that speaks to innovation and collaboration. We won't be able to architect a better future if our organizational cultures don't foster that. That requires, we don't just need a specific skill set, we also need the environment for that skill set to be able to produce architects for the future. Massive intelligent digital twins. When I developed this course, that was pre-Meta. Now that we have Meta and the multiverse, no, not the multiverse, sorry, that's Marvel, the metaverse. This idea of digital twins is all the more real. So there's new opportunities for bringing together data and intelligence to answer big questions and reimagine how they collaborate and innovate. Again, speaking to collaboration and innovation, not in itself, but a means to achieve this success measure of tech in the future. And then democratization that we've mentioned in the discussion when we asked the question, when I asked the Menti question. With democratized technology, every employee can be an innovator empowered to create technology-driven solutions, but rightfully so. Sorry, I didn't get the name of the speaker who commented on the processes. This democratization brings obviously a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, it definitely also comes at a cost. So what are the possible problems that can occur alongside that as well? And then the last one, multi-party systems. Speaking again to collaboration, enterprises can gain greater resilience and adaptability, more seamlessly share data, and set new ecosystem for its standards for their industries. We don't operate alone. You can have the best organization, but if you can't collaborate, it is unlikely that you will succeed in the future. I think that's it. Yes, that is it. If you want to sink your teeth into the practical part of what we've discussed today, as well as in the previous sessions, we have our hackathon next month. And there we will actually be using tools. It'll be less of me talking, more of you doing in the session. It's going to be a long session, not just an hour. And then you can ask me questions and I can give you some tips on how to use different things. And that is it. Now it's open for, there's this little quote, make sure everyone in the company has great opportunities, has meaningful impact, and is good and is contributing to the good of society. And that requires the appropriate organizational culture. These are the references that I use, and those are my contact details. That is my, how do I do for time? Not bad.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Cliff. Round of applause. Any questions?
The thing about culture, and one of the things Stelios and Cliff, I'd like to share with people, because I'm trying to get a grip on this. The culture of the retail sector has changed significantly. The zero touch, the restaurants you go into, you don't have, to order, you order on your app and food comes to your table. That's changing the interaction layer, right? I'm just wondering, yeah, I get what you're saying about the traditional enterprise where data will answer a lot of questions and you're sitting in an office. How do you think the culture will be affected for the retail sector where traditionally it's interaction with the clientele that mattered a lot?
Interesting. Well, okay, so the first that we need to distinguish is the organizational culture that I spoke about today and in the previous sessions has got more to do with how people interact within the organization. I honestly, I have to, I'm very big on admitting when I don't know stuff. I don't know how the culture of between the customer and the organization, if it's a retail organization, I haven't given that a lot of thought. I think there is a lot of other dynamics. I think there's going to be a lot more external dynamics that impacts on that: legislation, national cultural norms, these types of things. So I can't really answer that question. I don't know.
I'm sorry, that's great. It's been nice to see your views on it, because what I'm thinking is normally retail leads the way and then the normal business and the enterprise follows. Apple, the whole sort of revolutions on technology. What I'm thinking, and I'm seeing more and more of, is bots for help desks. So that interaction you had internally with an individual to express a problem. I'll be interested to see if anyone else is seeing that, but I've certainly seen a lot of ServiceNow bots being created that fake talk to people. Again, just a thought. I'm pretty sure it's off topic, and I apologize for being off topic.
I think that's certainly fine.
I think there's a point to be made around this that sits very nicely with what's been discussed, and that's around the culture of communication. So if we think, for example, about the way in which so I'm at a restaurant, as the gentleman has just suggested, and I'm utilizing an app to order my food. I have a stream that's a layer of communication with the company, with the provider of that service. And there's an opportunity there to think very carefully about the tonality of that communication. And that can be utilized to speak to me as an end user, as a customer, about the culture of that company. How is that coming across to me? What's the tonality? How does that land with me as a user of that platform? And that's still an opportunity. Although you've got the hands off, you still have that representative of that culture. And I think that can still be utilized to great effect.
I think what we can probably extract from the stuff that I've spoken about is how the tonality or the different types of interactions, how that is in line or congruent with values and worldviews. So if for example, you're working with an app and it's got a certain type of communication with it, it might likely be successful or get the results that you want if you're sensitive to the cultural influences, but specifically what is the values of that user and what is their worldview. I think that is maybe something that we can use from what we've discussed here today. As to look at is the solution that I'm trying to implement, is that speaking to the values and the worldviews of the person that I'm designing it for, and then that might yield some cultural benefits. Good, very good points. Any other questions?
I'm not sure there are any other questions, but I think there was a very interesting session, and it's good that we had people joining, even though it was during the day. And usually we try to run the sessions after working hours, but I think we had a decent attendance rate. Thanks everyone for being here, staying with us until the end. For those of us who didn't check the website, please do so. You can also find the previous events of this series on YouTube. Links were posted on Zoom. And we will be notifying everyone about the online assisted course, which will be launched this month, which also includes 1 hour of coaching with Dr. Cliff. And as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, any suggestions about events to run in the future, about organizational culture or other related topics, then please feel free to reach out to us. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
you.